Welcome to Relationscapes. I'm journalist Blair Hodges, and we're mapping the stories and ideas that shape who we are and how we connect with each other. Our guide in this episode is artist Mary Catherine Starr.
I was just asking you to show me that you could think of me and put someone else's desires or needs first. And he couldn't believe I was this upset. There was a whole fight. He was like, it's just peanut butter, and to me it was like, it's so much more than peanut butter. It's showing that you care. And so even now, 20 years later, I'll say it's not about the peanut butter.
Mary Catherine Starr's Instagram comics about marriage, motherhood, and the mental load have resonated with millions of people around the world, mostly women. And she joins us to discuss why her work is connecting so deeply and why it's less about offering fixes and more about experiencing catharsis. Sometimes it just feels good to state the obvious in comic form about the quiet buildup of resentment in a relationship, the slow work of therapy, and how peanut butter, peaches, and soap can become symbols of something much bigger. Her new book is called Mama Needs a Minute, a candid, funny, ultra-relatable comic memoir about surviving motherhood. And we're talking about it right now. Mary Catherine Starr, welcome to Relationscapes.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Right out of the gate, I wanted to ask you, this is really important to me. I wanted to ask you about Moonlight the fish. Is Moonlight still with us?
Oh, no. And you know what's so funny? No, both of the fish, well, the first fish obviously died very quickly. Both the fish are gone. And right now, actually, I need to make a follow-up comic about this because I have an empty tank that has not been dealt with. I mean, it's full of water. All the stuff is still in there. There's a dead snail in it, actually. And that's it. And it's still sitting in the playroom and no one has dealt with it because I haven't dealt with it. So yeah, we just have an empty, basically it's like a watery grave for one snail now in our home.
Did you have to bury Moonlight yourself or?
What happened? No, I think I just flushed Moonlight when everyone was at school and that was the end of that.
Well, I want to dedicate this episode to Moonlight then, if that's okay.
The only pet my children have had didn't last long.
Okay, well, you started off doing this Instagram account, and it was dedicated to these little comics you were doing about mom life, and it seemed to you like a kind of a fun side project. And one of these talks about Moonlight. That's why I asked about Moonlight. But there was this day in 2022 when one of your posts finally went viral, and it was called An Illustrated Guide to the Double Standards of Parenting. And I wondered what it was like in practical terms going viral. How did you experience it?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of everything everybody says it is. It's overwhelming, it's exciting, it's intimidating, it's a little scary because you get, way more attention than you ever expected. So, I mean, it's a mixed bag. Ultimately, I'm very thankful I went viral. That's the reason I was able to write the book I wrote. It's the reason I, have gotten to reach so many more people with my message that I really care about. But, it was a shock. And I think the way I went viral, I mean, it's pretty rare now for static posts to go viral this way. I mean, video posts are going viral this way all the time. But I think I was right before kind of the Reels hit Instagram and everything changed with TikTok. And so I'm lucky in that way that I think it would be very hard for a comic like that, one with multiple panels, to go as viral as it did now. But yeah, I mean, it was wild. It was, people just from all over the world. And that's the thing I think that was so surprising to me is I didn't know that when I went viral here, and then I went viral in Brazil, and then I went viral in Turkey. And it was it kept coming in these waves. And then there was a second wave of virality when it got picked up by another whole kind of area. So it was wild. It lasted really long. And I went from 15,000 followers to 200,000 in a matter of months. So it was a very wild time. But I went viral later for a negative reason. So this now in retrospect, the first viral moment was amazing because it was mostly positive.
What was the negative one?
It was the post I did about peaches, about
eat the damn peach.
Eat the damn peach. Yeah. So it went viral on Twitter with a bunch of men who who had it out of context, and it was a lot of actually young boys, I would say, and they all came over from Twitter to attack me on Instagram, and they were really nasty and horrible, and that was a much darker time. So the first viral moment now looking back, I'm like, oh, that was nothing. That was
Did
lovely.
you see any trolling happen with the first one? Like,
Yeah, I did. But it was much, in comparison, it was mostly
okay.
a lot of women coming over and saying, oh my gosh. And men too, people who are saying,
Yeah.
yes, this is true. I've experienced this.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course, there were the angry men who thought I was out to say dads are, are failing, which is not at all the point of that comic.
Yeah, the comic is about like social perceptions of what parenting is like. And so I can describe it here. It's an illustrated guide to the double standards of parenting. And then like on the left side, you've got a dad and it says fun dad. And he's like coming in the door with a bag of fast food. And then next to him, you've got lazy mom, and she's coming in the door with a bag of fast food.
Yeah,
And then you've got like a dad with his kid and it says babysitting. And then you've got a mom with her kid and it says parenting. And it just goes through all these ways that, I mean, I've experienced all of these.
Yeah.
So for this one to hit, like, why do you think this is the one that finally hit? Because you've done a lot of great comics up until then. Do you think there was something about this one, or do you kind of see, hey, sometimes something just hits? Do you think it was the message itself that resonated big, or?
I think it's the simplicity of the message. I think it's just like the double panel of moms and dads doing the exact same thing. It's just a super simple image with just one word above it or two words above it that describes it. And I think because of the simplicity of it, it just like struck in a way that was very clear and relatable. And I think, the examples I give now, I've talked about them so much now, in other formats, but I think for some reason, just side by side, same exact thing, just mom versus dad, something about seeing it that way struck a chord. Yeah. And it was one of those comics I'd been thinking about it. Like I had come up with the idea probably 3 or 4 months before I actually made it. And I was thinking about it. Oh, I've got to get that one done. I want to do that one. I want to do that one, and I finally got around to doing it. And then it just like caught like wildfire. So yeah.
Yeah, like I said, that was the first one that I remember seeing as well. You mentioned in this book that you've read a lot of books on motherhood and about household inequality, and now you've actually written one. So how do you see yours situated within that genre? How does yours differ? Where is it the same?
Well, I think I was reading a lot of those books, especially when I was in kind of the dark days of early parenting, when I was really lost and overwhelmed. And it was kind of like I found myself in this place where, I never thought I would be, where it's like, how did I fall into this like traditional, quote unquote, traditional mothering role, despite, trying to do everything in the contrary? Like, how did we get to this point? And so I started reading a lot about, just all of this, feminist mothering, household equality, imbalance, what's going on here. And all the books I read about it had a lot of data and had a lot of it was very depressing, very true data, and they were well researched. I mean, they were great books, but I felt like I left them feeling even just more overwhelmed. And they would have like takeaways or things you could do, but they felt like just another thing on my to-do list. And it was like, it just like was building up more and more that I needed to do to fix this. And so the book I wanted to write, the conversation I wanted to have was just more of what I wanted to read at that time, which I think was someone saying like, it's not your fault that you've gotten here. You're not a bad mom. You've got all these things working against you. You're not alone. Here's why. And then like, yeah, this sucks. I didn't want to have 10 more things to add to my to-do list of how to fix this. And now my husband and I need to sit down and do this, 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 and this to get out of this mess. I wanted that later, and I'm working through that now. But I think when I was really in it, I just wanted to feel seen and understood. And so that's what I wanted to do with this book. Of course, I try to offer some little glimmers of like, here's some things you can do. And I hope people can learn from my mistakes. But ultimately, I just wanted people to feel seen and less alone, and maybe not blame themselves for how they've gotten into this place where they're overwhelmed.
And the biggest difference for me, having read a lot of these books, is that you do it through the medium of comics.
Yeah.
And I wonder what you think about that as an artist. What can comics do that other mediums can't do?
Yeah, they feel like a really great entry point. They're less serious. They're less intense. They're less overwhelming. I think for an exhausted parent, sometimes a book you can dip in and out of really easily that doesn't feel like you have to be super awake or really cerebral or like in that place of like, okay, I'm going to sit down and fix this. But it feels like it's something you can dip into. It can make you laugh. It makes you think. You can put it down. It seems a little easier. And then I also think, at least from the feedback I've gotten from a lot of my followers, that it's a lot easier to take to your spouse, right? Like, so all these, women often will tag their male partners in like in the comments be like, LOL, it's us. And it's like not the greatest story, but it's like they can laugh about it and then it kind of starts this dialogue. And it's a much less intense way to bring this stuff up. And I think especially if you're like laughing at someone else's like, oh my God, I can't believe that her husband did that. You could say, oh yeah, well, you've done something like that before too. And it's like, it enables people to have, I think, a less intense, emotionally fraught discussion about these really important topics.
Yeah, it makes it really easy to share. That's the first thing that came to mind for me too, was like, if I'm reading a book, like a regular, no pictures, this kind of thing, it's sort of like building a house of cards. You're going through a whole chapter. They're building their case, right?
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of extra work. With a comic, I can just snap onto a page, read that, it's done, and then I can be like, hey, check this out. Look at this. And it's quick.
I hadn't even thought about that. Yes, that's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have to be like, okay, so I'm going to I want you to read this paragraph, but I need to like set up the whole chapter and tell you like the context and da-da-da. With this, I'm like, here you go, look at this.
You're so right. You're so right. Yeah, I think that's exactly it. And I didn't set out, when I started making these comics, I did not set out with that kind of grand big picture.
Sure.
It was much more.
Change the world.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I'm going to say this, I'm going to have this conversation in a way it's never been had. And I'm going to, introduce it in these really bite-sized, I mean, there was none of that. It wasn't pre-planned. It just happened. And
this is what comics can do.
Yeah.
We undervalue comics. I think we really do. They've been cheapened in the public mind a lot. And like when I started reading graphic novels a few years ago and have kind of fallen in love with them. And I'm a big reader, but I've added graphic novels and illustrated stuff because I think of the power that I mentioned of sharing, but also it's more visceral and seeing the images, and your style of art is so yours and what you do with it. So man, the images are just really powerful.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I also am a huge reader, and I mostly read text-based books, but I've also had this awakening as I've gotten into making comics, which is, as someone who was like much more like, considered myself more of a fine artist. It was like I had to make the mental adjustment, like this is still art. It's just a totally different way of expressing yourself. But now I love it, and I can't get enough of graphic novels because I think that they just, like you said, they capture emotion, and you also get to know, I think, the writer or the illustrator in a very different way because you see them kind of how they see themselves or how they, you seeing it through their eyes in a way that's not just a text-based, but also visually.
I wanted to ask you about that because I wondered what it was like for you to repeatedly draw yourself and often not in the most flattering circumstances. I mean, like on the cover, you're sitting on the toilet, your pants are down on the cover of the book.
I know. When we picked the cover, one of my friends, I sent it to them, my friends being like, what do you think? One of my friends said, I think it's great, but do you really want to be standing by posters of yourself on the toilet for a year promoting this book? And I was like, yeah, maybe. Maybe I do. But yeah, I mean, I think what I love about comics is that it doesn't feel super personal. And the reason I started making them, I had a small personal Instagram feed that was associated with a blog, just a written blog that I had been doing for years. And
blogs, wow.
Yeah, back in the day. That's like where I got my start. But
was it a blog spot, by the way?
It was not. It was Weebly, Weebly.com,
Weebly,
even better.
Excellent.
Even more ridiculous. But I blogged for like 10 years, so I got very comfortable with like sharing my story online. But I was sharing photographs, and then when I had kids and I started talking on my blog and on my personal Instagram just about kind of the challenges of parenting, I felt like there was no way, I didn't have images to go with that. It's like we're moving towards this more image-based economy, and I'm like, I'm not going to put up a picture of me smiling with my happy baby and then underneath be like, I'm dying, we're not sleeping, But like, I didn't want to put up pictures of us looking like a hot mess because that, that's not what, at that time, Instagram was all about making things look pretty. So I feel like I didn't have, it was like I was looking for some sort of image I could put up with this like truth, the real side of things. And so I think drawing was a way I could kind of depict myself as a hot mess or how I was feeling without actually showing a picture of me in my messy home, totally overwhelmed. So it was like it's like a little removed from the personal for me. So I think drawing myself feels like that too. It feels like I'm drawing a character who's based on me. So it doesn't feel as vulnerable.
There's a few places where you mentioned struggling with body image issues, especially earlier in your life. Like when you first met the man who you'd later marry, you talked about having an eating disorder. And I wondered about that in terms of drawing yourself, if you've had to kind of reckon with how you process body image issues and then as you're drawing yourself in your own body.
Yeah.
There's a picture of you delivering your child. Right. So you're naked on the table.
Right. Yeah. Again, it's really funny because I don't think I've put this together until you ask these very insightful questions. It's like I don't think of me as me when I draw the comics. I mean, I do, it's definitely my story, but it's almost like I'm just creating these little pictures that tell the story, but it's not necessarily, I'm not like worried about how my body looks or how I'm drawing myself, because it does feel like it's just like a kind of whimsical little depiction of this moment. So yeah, it is. I'm a little removed from my cartoon self, I guess.
Yeah, that's interesting because it is you. Like I can tell it's you, and which is cool because you don't do faces. It's part of your style, and a style that you share with some others is like you draw the kind of the outline of the person, but without the facial features. So tell me about like that decision. Was that also maybe that's part of it of like not making it too you?
Yeah, I think you might be right about that. And the reason I got to this, again, it's like a happy accident, But I way back in the day before I was ever doing comics, when my husband and I got married, I made a little what I called like a wedding logo for our wedding, and I drew just the outlines of our heads. So I wanted like a really simple line drawing that would go on our programs and stuff like that. So it was just like our heads. And I shared that to my blog, this is my fun little wedding logo. And then people liked it. And so people started asking me to do them for them. So I had this little side hustle on my like Etsy where I would make wedding drawings or wedding logos for people. People would make them into like temporary tattoos. It'd be the couple. And so that was like the way I started drawing people. And it was just like a fun, I felt like it was like really cool how you could capture the essence of somebody just from the face shape of their head and their hairline or their hair.
Yeah.
And so I kind of...
so had you not seen that kind of thing happening? Did you...
I don't know. I mean, I think maybe...
it's kind of popular now. Like I see it more often. But if
I mean, I must have, there must have been something I don't know if I wasn't like I don't feel like I like started that. I think it was
trying
more
to figure out if you're the pioneer. Come on,
I don't think
the
so.
credit.
It wasn't that big. No, I think it was probably just...
We're here with the creator of the simple line drawing of people, Mary Catherine.
I wish I could credit myself for that. No, I really think I must have just seen it, out in the ether on Etsy or whatever. But like I just, But that's just how I got used to drawing people. And then it was like when I started making these comics, it was like... It was just kind of easy. It's much quicker. It's much easier. I didn't have to obsess over the facial expressions. It was just like, I'll just do this. And then now, of course, I like it because I think people can see themselves more in the comics too, because maybe you don't have the same hair color as this figure I've drawn, but it's not like you're seeing their face. You don't see a lot about them. So it is kind of like a faceless husband and wife or a faceless mother and children or, and I think you can kind of insert yourself a little bit more that way.
And you have to be creative in how you help the characters emote too, because face does so much. And so instead you're using like lines around their heads, or body positions. So to find creative ways to depict tension or sorrow or pain or joy, it's fascinating to see how you can do that without the face, because the face says so much. We use the face as humans so much.
Yeah. Every once in a while, I'm like, okay, I've just got to put some like crazy eyes in here or something. Every once in a while, I've got to rely on a little bit of a facial expression. But yeah.
Well, hey, let's talk about soap and peanut butter now. These are two things that don't seem to mix, but your book uses each of these as a symbol of relationship inequality. So let's begin with soap, a story about soap.
Yes. My now husband and I met in college, and one of our first like interactions that I really remember was when he IM'd me back in the day on our little college computers and asked if I had any soap he could borrow, because he lived in a house of like 6, I don't remember how many it was now, I probably say in the book, 6 or 8 guys, and no one in the whole house had a bar of soap, and he needed to shower. And so I remember, I did have some extra soap. I threw it out my dorm room window to him waiting below. He grabbed the soap, and I don't know if we talked again after that for a couple months. But in the book, I talk about how, looking back, it's very funny to me that our relationship started with him kind of needing help with a basic care task and me supplying it. And, now here we are. So far in the future, 20 years later, is still kind of having those same little back and forths about household needs. Yeah.
Well, and you dig into your own psychology about it too, which is that there was also something about it that was almost endearing, or like you felt like you were being helpful and you liked that.
Yeah. And there were a lot of times, in our early years of dating, when I wasn't a mother, I was an unencumbered college kid, like I did like being able to help him with things and kind of teach him and take care of him in a way. I think, it was kind of nice. And, when he went to law school, I remember I went to visit him and I like helped him pick out a bed in a bag from Bed Bath & Beyond, where it's like, the sheets and the comforter all in one bag. And he thought it was so cool. And I was like, look at me helping him get sheets. There was something kind of nice and familial about that. And, I think a lot of people, maybe a lot of women maybe find themselves like enjoying kind of helping to teach their,
Yeah.
man-child partners at the beginning, kind of the ways of the world. And then I think, down the line, that kind of needing to help take care of your partner can get real old, especially once you're taking care of actual children.
Right. And also how your partner takes care of you, which brings us to the peanut butter story.
Yes. This is, actually, I've been really surprised. This chapter, more than any other chapter, has sent people to message me and to say how enraged it made them. A lot of people, this chapter really resonates. I've also had a lot of people who are like, women who've been married for way longer than I have, who've reached out to me saying, "Oh, we all have a peanut butter story." It's this very like, I think it resonates on a deep level. But the short version of the story, which is a whole chapter in my book, is I was studying abroad in France in college. And my husband at that time had already graduated from college. He was living with his grandparents and working, and he was coming to visit me for a break, and I asked him if he could bring me some peanut butter from the U.S. because the peanut butter in France at the time was pretty gross, very expensive, very small, and I was just dying for some like good old American Jif. And so I asked him
50% wax.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Now looking back, gross, but at the time. But so I asked him multiple times, every time we would talk, please, when you come visit, please just bring me the biggest jar of Jif you can find. And some of my friends, their boyfriends had like sent them care packages with Jif. So I was like, he hasn't done that. Let's get him to bring it over. So I asked him so many times. The night before he was coming to visit, I talked to him on the phone. "Did you get the peanut butter?" He said, "Oh, no, I haven't gotten it yet, but I'll see if I can get it tomorrow before I come." And I was like, "Please, it's all I want from you. Just bring me some peanut butter." And I'm thinking if this were me, I would bring him a whole extra suitcase full of peanut butter. Like this is, this is such an easy way you can like have a huge win and just show me that you're thinking of me. And so he showed up in France, and, we had a wonderful reunion in Paris, and we get to our little hotel, and I'm like, "Did you bring the peanut butter?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, I had Grammy," his grandmother, "I had Grammy pick some up at the store this morning." So I'm like, okay, the day of, he sends his grandmother to get it. Okay. He gets it out. It's like the smallest jar of peanut butter I've ever seen. Like, I don't even know they make them this small. And I was obviously super angry, but I'm like, okay. I'm just going to like I haven't seen him in months. Like, here we are. So I'm just like, thank you so much, whatever. I move on. A few days later on our trip, I'm in the shower. We were like in Italy at this point, and I get out of the shower and I come into the room.
By the way, I just want a trigger warning right here, people.
Warning, yeah.
Just prepare yourselves.
Get ready.
You're going to get angry.
I came into the room. I go, and he's sitting on the bed with my jar of peanut butter open, eating with his finger, scooping his finger into the jar of peanut butter that he brought me, eating it with straight out of the jar from his finger. And obviously I lost my mind. The least he could have done was not eat it. The one treat he brought me that I begged for, that I was expecting a huge jar or at least multiple jars. I mean, it was, so it was like a huge moment in our relationship. We had a huge fight. We ended up breaking up in Italy. I mean, it was a whole
There's
thing.
a lot of squiggle lines around your head in this part.
Yes. But to me, this story, and the reason I think it resonates with so many people, especially women, is like, I was just asking you to show me that you could think of me and put someone else's desires or needs first. Mm-hmm. And like, if it had been me, I would have done so much. I would have gone so over and beyond because it's like such a simple, wonderful thing to do. And, or you could have sent me care packages of peanut butter. There's so many things. But instead, it was like he couldn't believe I was this upset. There was a whole fight. And, he was like, "It's just peanut butter," and to me, it was like, it's so much more than peanut butter. It's showing that you care. And so even now, 20 years later, we still have, I'll say like, it's not about the peanut butter. And it's, it's a symbol of like, that I think so many people have felt in their relationship. It's not about that. It's about what's behind that, the message that you're sending me by not doing this one thing I asked you to do that means a lot to me. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then by the time you, as you said, you ended up getting married.
Mm-hmm.
You lived together for about a year and then got married. So there must have been some other reasons why you liked him other than the peanut butter, of course. But you'd been through a lot at this point. You'd had losses and disappointments and some difficult family issues and moves, and moving is a challenge. So you'd been through that. Mm-hmm. And you say you expected parenting, now that you're going to do that, to be hard, but you also felt pretty experienced. You'd been together for 10 years at this point, and you'd had a dog, so of course.
Yeah, the old starter child.
Yeah, exactly. But you felt completely clueless in retrospect about what you might have anticipated. And that was after 10 years. So it just made me think like, wow, I mean, some people will start having kids right away and not have all that other stuff. So... Right. Do you feel like at least waiting for you was some kind of advantage, or do you think actually, maybe you didn't learn the lessons that would have helped during that time period?
I think for us, it's different for everybody, but I think for us, I'm glad we have all that time because we did have 10 really wonderful years of the two of us where we, I think, solidified how much we do love being together. I wonder sometimes if we would have made it through the first few really hard years of parenting if we didn't have that, if I didn't have that. When things got really tough between us, I think it was good to know that like underneath all that, we have like a lot of history. We really love each other. And when we weren't parenting together, we were really great. So that helped me get through those harder times, which, now we're definitely on the other side and in a much better place than we were kind of at the time I was writing this book. Or I was writing this book as we were already kind of coming out of it, but I was able to look back. But yeah, for us, I think it was great that we had that time before so that we know each other as non-parents and know who we really are. So that when that really stressful time where we, I think, both turned into people who we aren't normally because we were so sleep deprived and so overwhelmed, I think we had that to hold on to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as you're pregnant, there's a comic here leading up to... It's during the pregnancy.
Yeah.
And it shows you and Ben sitting on the couch. You're in your second trimester, and you're ready to start getting specific about planning. And so you're like, okay, here's what we need. Right? We need to start planning this. And Ben's response is basically like, hey, honey, we need to relax. You just need to relax. Doesn't seem like the best response at that point. It's just like, you're worried. Just relax.
Yes. Well, that's kind of a theme for us where I'm spinning out and he's like, it'll all work out. And I'm like, it'll work out because I'm going to make it work out, And so it's a long-term dynamic that we have. Yes.
Okay. To give people an idea of what's going through your head, this is on page 60 of the book. I thought I'd have you read the Mary Catherine's pregnancy to-do list that you had put together. And then on the following page, Ben's pregnancy to-do list. So let's have you read through this list for prospective parents, for people who are glad they won't ever be parents, for people who might be thinking of becoming parents, whatever. Yeah.
And this is, I think, the reason that this feels important to include in this book is I think it sets up that the imbalance started when I was pregnant. And I didn't realize that at the time. At the time, I just thought like, this is kind of the stuff that I'm focused on right now because I'm the one who's pregnant. But like once the baby's here, he'll be much more engaged in all this stuff. So my pregnancy to-do list was go to regular doctor's appointments, paint and decorate the nursery, read books about pregnancy, labor, and breastfeeding, make a birth plan, ask other moms and research about the supplies needed, complete baby registry, buy supplies not on registry or not received from registry, research doulas and schedule calls, interview doulas, put together nursery furniture, clean secondhand changing table, wash, fold, and organize all baby clothes, set up diaper changing station, get breast pump and all feeding supplies, figure out and set up baby monitor, install car seat, screen childcare providers, schedule interviews, hire childcare provider, schedule birthing class, schedule hospital tours and classes, make hospital packing list, pop pack, hospital bag.
I think I have a sound effect for that. Let me see. No, that's not it. There we go.
There we
go. Do you hear that?
Just a few small things to do during pregnancy. And then Ben's list is attend classes and appointments that Mary Catherine schedules, add baby to health insurance, set up college savings account for child, help paint the nursery, help pick up nursery furniture and carry it up to nursery, attend interviews that Mary Catherine sets up with childcare providers, pack my hospital bag, pack snacks for hospital when MC goes into labor.
Okay, I think I have a sound effect for that one too.
Amazing. Yes. Thank you for that.
Now, there's something really subtle here that I want to point out, that in both of these illustrations, it's your hand holding the lists.
Absolutely it is. I am the list maker, of course. Here's your list, honey.
That alone says so much. Seeing your little painted fingernail there is like, you've done both these lists.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And I think that's, again, like it's so easy to rationalize away small instances, to say, oh, well, it's because in this situation is because I'm the one who's pregnant and I'm the one who just likes organizing, or I'm the one who likes setting up, rooms and decorating. So
you like it.
Yeah, I like it, right? So it's like, of course I'm going to be the one doing it. But I think when you're doing that for so many different aspects of parenting, even before the baby comes, it's going to go right into now the baby's here. Now I'm continuing to take on more and more and more. And part of that is our personalities. Part of that is our socialization. Part of that is the expectations that are put on us after we become parents. And then part of it is, like that he's not stepping up and I am stepping up too much, So there's a lot at play here. But my point with sharing a lot of the stuff about what happens during pregnancy and even in wedding planning is that that's kind of where couples can start to set up these dynamics where the female partner is doing way more. And this is, again, of course, like, heterosexual couples. But I just think these dynamics get started really early. And, I felt like we were, despite we haven't really talked about this, but I did feel like we were very egalitarian in terms of like our household chores and stuff before we had kids. And so somehow along the way, things just really changed. And that's where this book is kind of like an exploration of like how and why did they change? And I think, what happened during pregnancy is an example of that.
That's Mary Catherine Starr, author and illustrator of Mama Needs a Minute, a candid, funny, all too relatable comic memoir about surviving motherhood. You can follow her on Instagram at momlife_comics. Mary Catherine, I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about Ben because he plays a big role throughout the book. And he's often, in this book at least, a kind of a source of frustration. Yeah. And throughout the book, you take us back to this couch scene where you and Ben are sitting side by side. And you're actually talking about the book. You're talking about the topics that you're covering, the ideas you're bringing up. And like, for example, he's like, I can't believe you're going to tell the peanut butter thing. Like,
yeah.
And I wondered, like, did you have any like real disagreements about what might be in the book?
Not really. I mean, Ben, despite the fact that this book is, very intensely about our relationship, he was pretty hands off. Like, he really didn't care about what I put in the book, which, I think we've talked about this a lot since, because even as I was writing it, I'd say like, oh, I just wrote the peanut butter chapter. Do you want to read it? And he'd be like, nah, I'm good. And I'd be like, are you sure? This book is about us. But I think, and he said this, he is also, I think, been able to kind of separate himself. Like, obviously it's our story, but he does now kind of see himself as this character in this important kind of story I'm trying to tell about the big picture issue with our culture and our society and our the way the expectations we have for parents. So I think he kind of sees himself as like that, the example of the every dad or the every man. And I really did go out of my way to make sure that I at least had his voice in here. And I didn't get verbatim his words, what he would say, but I know him pretty well. We've had many of these conversations many times. So it was pretty easy for me to write him the way I think he would respond in these conversations. But yeah, he was surprisingly hands-off, which I think if it was the opposite, if he was writing a book about a relationship, I'd want to read every word and have veto
but
power.
I think that tracks. Yeah. That tracks with the whole dynamic. I can hear some listeners being like, Mary Catherine, he didn't read it. Yeah. It's the peanut butter all over again. Oh, no.
I know. Yeah, but I mean, and the thing is, he's super supportive of it. Like, he really loves what I'm doing. So, it's like, again, it's like different personalities completely and different ways of processing the world. And, I want to talk about every little thing and share every little detail and mull over it. And let's look back and let's see how we, and he's ready to move forward and it's fine. Like, whatever I want to say about the past is fine. It's okay. He's not stuck there. So, just very different approaches to how we process what happened.
Yeah. He seems more easygoing. Do you feel like that's been a kind of a check for you or sort of? I think at some point you describe yourself as type A personality.
For sure.
Yeah. So, do you feel like there's a kind of an interesting balance that happens there, or kind of like I think maybe it's good for me to relax a little bit.
I think it's one of the reasons we were initially like attracted to each other. And one of the things I like about him, and also that drives me crazy. And I think probably he'd say the same, for the same reason that we balance each other out, we also just annoy each other. And so I think it can be good and bad. I think if I were with another type A person, we might both drive each other insane. It might be, the household would be like explosive, But he's very, in his own way, he's very routine oriented and regimented in certain things, certain aspects. But he definitely has much more of an ability to relax than I do.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
In terms of feedback, so when you post stuff about Ben, I'm sure sometimes you get comments that are like, I would divorce him, or why don't you, like, do you get these sort of negative comments about like, you need to kick him to the curb, Mary Catherine?
All the time. And that's hard. I actually really, I've done less and less of the super personal comics to Instagram for that reason. I mean, I still do it, but I've moved more of the personal, like, life, our intimate stories to my Substack behind a paywall, so that the people who I feel like really get it and know why I am, why I love him and appreciate him in the same ways that I do, can get those and understand them in context. And then, although I do still, of course, post personal stuff to my main feed, I've tried to do a little more of the big picture societal commentary there and share other people's stories too, so that so he gets a little less attacked on the internet, because it doesn't feel great. I'm protective of him despite, using our story. I don't want people to just railing him all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go to one of these like kind of more generalized ones
Yeah.
as an example. This is on page 220, and I'll have you describe this comic to folks.
Yeah. So this comic, and the funny thing about this comic is this actually was Ben's idea. He does give me ideas. He'll say like, oh, you know what would be so funny? And he'll even say like, if it was a picture of me, like, he makes fun of himself. So I appreciate that. He gets it. So on this page, it's called Weaponized Incompetence Tools of the Trade. And this was Ben's idea. He said I should make it him. I have not. I've made it a generic man.
Yeah, I noticed it's more,
It's not him.
A little different.
But it's a man wearing a tool belt with all sorts of kind of like weapons or tools on it. And there's an arrow with text pointing to each tool. So one of them is him saying, it's easier for everyone if you just do it. Another one is, you're so much better at it than I am. Another one, you didn't tell me I needed to do that. Or I just don't care about it as much as you do. Or I don't know where it goes. I've never done it before. It will take me so much longer. And these are probably all things Ben has said to me, but also, we all use weaponized incompetence in some aspects of our lives, and I have plenty of times when I talk about this on the internet, women, moms will message me and say, oh my God, I'm the one who does that in my relationship. So this is not just a man, this is not just like a male,
I feel
female.
like my wife does that around like technology stuff.
Yes.
Basically. Like, I don't know how to plug in my iPhone. I'm like, what? You just plug it in.
Yeah. Well, Ben will say to me, like, I think you're using weaponized incompetence right now. And I will go, yeah, I am, because I don't want to take this on. So I'm purposefully not going to ever do this, Ben does all of our cooking, and I really appreciate that. And I don't like cooking. I'm not good at it. And so I purposefully don't learn how to cook meat. Like, if you want meat, you got to cook it. And I admit that. He'll say like, this is weaponized competence. And I'm like, yes, it's one thing I never want to take on. I don't ever want to be the one who cooks our meat. So I'm going to continue to not learn how. So, this is not just something that men do, but it's definitely something that a lot of mothers have felt with their male partners around parenting tasks. It's a very common issue there. So that's kind of why I talk about it a lot in this book.
You said that you talk about some of the things you like more about Ben, like on Substack and other places. Mm-hmm. What are some of those things? Like, if people wonder, because I do think like people might get a skewed perception of Ben from the book, right?
Right, yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about that, like what you value there.
Well, Ben is hilarious. He's really, really funny. And that's, I make comics. I love laughing. And he has a really great sense of humor. And I've always loved that. And, coming back to the comics, like, I think one of the reason he appreciates them and can get behind me telling these stories is because he loves to laugh at them with me. Like, we really love to laugh together. And so often I'll show him a comic and he'll die laughing. Oh my God, that's so good. That's so true. So he has a great sense of humor. He doesn't take himself too seriously, and he never has. He's really passionate about the things he loves. He's like, he really, when he gets into something, he's super focused and really into it. And he's just like he's really, you can really count on him. He's very reliable. He's really steady in a lot of ways. And again, sometimes that can be challenging, but as someone who gets easily spun up and easily anxious, like, he is a really steady and grounding presence in my life. And he always has been. And from the beginning of our relationship, he has been someone who's enabled me to slow down and rest more than I would otherwise. So I really appreciate that about him. Yeah.
Yeah. And I liked your separate worlds theory that you talked about, and how you wish he would get into yours a little bit more. So I can see where you're describing things that really draw you to him and can just feel that there. Tell me about the separate worlds theory and how you think people can use that as a way to connect better.
Yeah. Well, so we were in couples therapy. We are now too, but this is a different kind called imago therapy that we tried for a little while. And in it, the therapist we worked with talked a lot about how, we live in these two completely different worlds, Mary Catherine's world and Ben's world. And our worlds are shaped by everything we've learned from our entire life experience, from our family of origin, from, the schools we went to, our friends, the cultures we grew up in, the places, all of that shapes our world. And so it's almost like visiting another country where you don't speak the language and you don't know their customs. And when you go there, you have to learn from the locals, and you have to learn how to be respectful, and you have to learn what you can and cannot do and what you should eat and what you shouldn't. And it's just like visiting this completely new place. And she was saying, I have to go visit his world and he has to come visit mine. And when we're in each other's worlds, like, we have to be curious and try to learn about this new ecosystem, this new culture that we're in. And it's not going to be the one we're familiar with. And so a lot of what she at the time was saying, we were kind of living in these two separate worlds, and we weren't taking the time to visit each other's worlds and like be curious about them and want to learn. And so I think that is something I've thought a lot about is like we are from such different worlds, despite both being like white middle class people in the US. Like we've lived completely different lives. You know, now we've been together for 20 years, but even so, my experience has been a female one. His has been a male. He's been in this world. You know, he was in the legal world as a lawyer for a long time. I'm over here in this artsy creativity yoga world. Like we walk in different planes, you know, a lot of the time. And not every couple does. Some couples are much more similar. So anyways, that's been a helpful thing for me to think about. And as we try to kind of learn to work together more as parents, because that's, I think for us, that's been a huge learning experience.
Yeah, I think curiosity is really underrated.
Yeah.
In fact, like if I was to think about the kind of advice I might give someone who's thinking about getting married or moving in with someone or becoming more of a long-term partnership, I would say cultivating curiosity is one of the top things people can do to improve or build a relationship.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, you know, one of the things as we talk about this that I just can't help but come back to is like, for me, all of this parenting, writing this book, posting on Instagram, all of it, like it's important for me to get this message out that like another person making a decision over and over again to like continue to live your life with another person is just really hard. You know, people are hard. We are so multidimensional. We all have so many challenges and issues and wonderful qualities. And I think, you know, that it's just not easy. And that's something I want people to see. Like you have to work at it. You're going to go through times that are challenging. I've heard some people say that like you have like, you know, 20 different marriages over the course of your marriage if you're together for a lifetime, you know, and that you're married to a completely different person at different stages. And you know, I think that the person I was in the early years of motherhood is a totally different person than I am now, totally different person than the 20-year-old Ben started dating. You know, and I think same with him. And so, you know, I obviously this is a book that's about parenting and motherhood, but to me, it's also about like the relationship that has, you know, for a lot of us is at the center of our families. And that's usually between the two parents. And so,
100%.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's not easy. It's something if you want to stay with the person that you chose to marry or chose to procreate with, that takes work. And so that's another message I, you know, like to send. But I don't, you know, I think I never want to say like, oh, I think the best choice is to stay married. Like I think for every couple, that decision has to be made on your own, especially after kids. But for us, that feels like what we want.
And I like you flagging the fact that like different therapies are even out there. Like the idea that, okay, yeah, we did this kind of therapy. Now you're doing something else. And there are different types of therapy that are going to fit different situations too. And as you said, there are circumstances where separating does make the most sense or can be the most healthy choice instead of the social stigma, which is if you have kids and you're married and you get divorced, you ruin the kids or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's more precarious for women often for financial reasons and things like that. But it can be the better, safer decision sometimes.
Yeah. And I get when you come back to those messages, you say like people are like, you know, why aren't you divorced already or something if I like say something. You know, it makes me really mad because I'm like, given the content I'm putting out there, don't you think that if I wanted to get divorced, I would? Like, I'm not under any disillusionment about like, you know, the state of hetero marriage in our country. Like the majority of marriages, the woman is being taken advantage of, you know? I mean, maybe I shouldn't say the majority, but from my data on Instagram, you know, a lot of people are feeling taken advantage of in some way.
There's inequalities.
Yes, there's inequality.
There's absolutely inequalities,
totally. And when I say taken advantage of, I just mean that they're doing a lot more labor, manual labor around the house and you know, visible labor. But so it's like, of course, if I wasn't happy, I would leave this marriage, you know? But I am, and I love him. And so it's always like kind of insulting too that people think that I, you know, wouldn't have the wherewithal if that's what we needed, but it's not. Yeah.
Right.
But that, you know.
Fortunately for you too, there's other people in your life that carry more weight than randos on the internet. For example, your dad who has a therapy background, speaking of therapy, and you're having at one point a really hard time in your marriage. This was during the pandemic was going on. This was kind of a breaking point for you. And I think for a lot of people, when the household inequalities really came to the fore, I experienced this with my partner and have talked about it in other episodes, but you had a really important conversation with your dad. What did he share with you at that time when you're like, this just isn't working?
Yeah. So my dad was visiting and Ben and I at that point, I was doing every night's bedtime. Like I did bedtime every single night. And it was just because it was, this, I talk about this in the book, but we'd set up this kind of inadvertent preferred parent situation because my daughter, my first child, never took a bottle, never took a binky. I was her everything, her source of soothing and food. So I was always the one who did bedtime because I would, breastfeed her to sleep. And then that I became the only person who knew how to do bedtime. And then she only wanted me. And so then I was just the bedtime person forever. And then we had a second. And then he wants me too. And so, I'm like, here I am with 2 kids during a pandemic. And every night I'm going upstairs and slogging through this like 2-hour bedtime routine with 2 kids. And I'm coming down. When it's over, it's like 9:30. I'm so pissed off. I'm so exhausted, And so
every night,
yeah. And it was, our kids are not great sleepers. They never have been. So it was like the process was just so demoralizing. And my dad was visiting. He's like, why don't you ever have Ben put the kids to bed? And I'm like, oh, it's just too hard. Like they would, lose their minds. It's like, we can't. And he's like, well, sometimes in parenting, you have to like go through something hard to get to a place where it's easier. And I'm like, oh, and he's like, Ben should just start putting them to bed. If you have to leave the house when he puts them to bed, you should leave the house. And I'm like, oh, and so we had like a longer conversation about it. And then
this is your dad.
This is my dad.
This is like a different generation.
Yes, yeah. And
he's the one that's supposed to be like, you're being the
Yes.
proper wife.
Right. It's your job.
He's supposed to be down smoking pipes with Ben.
Yes. Luckily, my dad is nothing like that. But so, then it was like this, it's like, of course, why is Ben not, our kids are old enough now. I'm not breastfeeding them both to bed. Like, why isn't Ben doing bedtime? And so, we pulled off the Band-Aid and Ben started doing bedtime. And now here we are, however many years later, 2 years later, and we alternate bedtimes. If we're both home, which our schedule, a lot of times one of us is out in the evenings for work. But if we're both home, we alternate and whoever's home puts the kids to bed. And it's like, not a big deal. And it's been like the nights I get to just do the dishes and listen to a podcast are like the best, like I'm free. So, there's so many things like that we did. Again, we like inadvertently from early days of parenting, set up this dynamic where I'm doing everything in one area. And it's not that Ben can't, it's that it's like feels easier at the time for me just to do it. And now here we are 6 years later and I'm still doing it all. And then I'm angry and resentful. Whereas if we just said, nope, Ben's going to do it now too, which he can. And often he wants to, he likes doing bedtime. Like it's fun for him because he hasn't been doing it for 8 years miserably.
This is the other thing is he misses out on bonding with the kids.
Totally.
Like this is a beautiful time. It's like once in a lifetime opportunity to do it. So not only does it overburden one parent, but the other parent who's not as involved is also missing out big time.
Yeah, and that's a point that I always want to make through my work is like, this is all hurting dads. And in our case, like it hurts Ben too. And it's not his fault that we got to the point where I was doing everything, just like it's not my fault either. There's so many other factors at play here. Part of it's like parental leave, part of it's job flexibility. From the beginning, I had a job that was more flexible. He didn't. I was home more.
Yeah, that's what happened to my wife and I too. Yeah.
And it's like he doesn't get the tools.
And she was taking care of her mom. So she's like home, taking care of her mom. And we had the baby. I had a full-time job.
Yeah.
So we started out with this very egalitarian mindset, but then practical matters. We're just like, okay, this just makes more sense right now. But then it got into all the patterns you described.
Yes.
And then we had to like deliberately make changes to that. That's part of the hard thing too, is the partner who cares more is probably already doing more and then has to do a little bit even more to get the change happening. And I think that's where a lot of people, and for us, that's kind of where we would get stuck is.
Absolutely.
Like I didn't really have any intrinsic drive in me to be like, hey, I should address this. Like she had to bring it up, which is additional cognitive labor.
Exactly. Yes. You just hit the nail on the head. Yes, that is exactly it. And I think that's why, we didn't make the switch to him doing bedtime too earlier because I would have to it felt like so much work to be like, okay, we're going to make the switch. Let's prep the kids. Let's make sure all the things so it was like just, it felt, quote unquote, easier for me to keep doing it, which ultimately it's not, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
And, now I have so much more freedom in my life. And we've had to basically this is not, some of this is in the book, but we are still peeling back all the layers from those first 2-3 years. Our kids are 8 and 5 and we're still going, okay, why am I still the one doing all this? You can do this too. Yes, I can.
When
You're
it's
right.
time to get in the car and go someplace, like who's getting the shoes and the coats and the...
Totally. Yes. Yeah. And part of that's me stepping back. He's taking them somewhere. Okay, I'm going to go upstairs and do what I need to do. And he's going to have to get it all together. I'm not going to hand him a bag with everything because then he learns.
Yeah.
And so there's just so many. I mean, it's like every facet of parenting and household management. If you get in this imbalance, you have to kind of fight your way back. And ultimately, it's worth it to do that, but it is a lot of extra work for the person who's already overwhelmed. Yeah.
And you say that the book's really more about catharsis, and I think there's a lot of that there. Not so much about solutions, but there are, I think, a lot of solutions in the book. I see a lot of helpful advice in the book where you talk about taking more time for yourself, like feeling less guilty about saying, hey, I need to be a self as well, like, which can feel selfish or like you're neglecting your kids. You talk about getting into therapy. You talk about anxiety medication when you needed that, making use of babysitters when you can, and of course, eat the peach, the one that
Yes.
that caused a lot of blowback for you. Which is, say what's the point of eat the peach? Because now people who know you can just be like eat the peach or like put a peach emoji, and everybody knows what you're talking about.
Totally, yeah. I got a tattoo of the peach, and
oh, cool.
A lot of my followers, I don't know if you can see it. A lot of my followers have gotten it too. There's like 30 probably plus people who've sent me pictures of their peach tattoo. So it's very cool, yeah. But the comic was one I made actually before anything went viral. It was like one of my first few comics, and it's based off of a complete normal. I mean, it's like so normal in my house, it's silly, but whenever I buy fresh peaches, which we all love, I'm always like seeing the peaches and like saving them for the kids, right? Or this is before. Now I don't. Now I've totally changed. But back in the day when I made this comic, I would see the peaches and I would like wait when they were fresh. I would cut them for the kids. I'd let them enjoy them. I might take like a half of a piece for myself. Then
the mom tax.
Yes, exactly. But like I was not eating. I was never going to eat a whole peach by myself, right? Because it was special food that the kids loved, even though I love peaches. And then that's kind of how I was with all fresh fruit. And then Ben would often use a full fresh peach in his daily morning smoothie because he liked how much it made his smoothie taste, obviously.
Indulgent, yes.
And so the comic is a picture, it's side-by-side panels. It's me thinking, oh, look, the last fresh peach, I'll save this for the kids. And Ben looking at it and saying, oh, look, the last fresh peach, I'll use it in my daily smoothie. And the thing at the top of the page just said, one of the many differences between me and my husband. So when I first shared it back before it went viral for the wrong reasons, it was just much like a commentary on, I said in the caption kind of like, I could use a little more indulgence, a little more eating of the peach, and my husband could maybe pull back and do a little less. And so it was like this commentary on like moms are always putting the kids first, dads are often putting themselves first, right? Or at least not thinking as much about the kids, whereas moms are always thinking about the kids. And so that one struck a chord. It was a lot of women just saying like, oh my God, I do it too. I never eat the fresh fruit anymore, blah, blah, blah. Well, when I reshared it again, so it's like 2 years later, that's after I'd already gone viral, so I had a lot more followers, a lot more attention. I shared it with a similar thing, and underneath I said like, hey moms, it's time we start eating the peach. Like we deserve fresh fruit too. We deserve treats too. Let's not just save everything for the kids. And so it was much more of a call to arms. Like let's start putting ourselves
Enjoy
first.
Something.
Yes, you deserve yummy things and fresh fruit. And it got picked up on Twitter by some young angry men, I guess, and they turned it into this whole like, I'm an abusive wife who won't let my husband eat the fresh peach that he earned with his hard-earned money while I sat at home making comics and eating bonbons. Right? So that's the dialogue. That I'm just lazy woman who has no job and he works 2 jobs, which
selfish.
Yeah. So anyways, it blew out of proportion. I was getting messages day and night. My husband, Ben, was getting emails from people who were like telling him to leave me. People were calling me abusive. It was like this whole thing. I think even...
Did anyone send actual peaches? Because if they didn't...
No, I wish.
Put your money where your mouth is, people.
I wish. No. I mean, it was people were... It was the amount of animosity that this silly little comic brought up was shocking. And
see, but I think it shows that there's real stuff behind the silliness.
Right.
And I think you know that too.
Yeah.
It's like... It is a silly thing, but there's also a ton behind it.
Yeah. And people don't the culture doesn't want moms and women to put themselves first. I think it really, it's like a mother should be only thinking, she should be self-sacrificial.
Yep.
And if she's not,
Yep.
she's a raging, So
narcissist or something.
Yeah. So, that was a wild thing. But ultimately, I mean, I still think a lot of good came out of it because I get messages to this day, and this was, forever ago now, over 2 years ago, I still get messages from moms when they take a picture of their fresh fruit and send it to me and say ate this today, thought of you, and it's like, I did a whole thing for a while on my feed where people would, every time a mom would, eat the damn peach, we called it. Every time she would send me a picture of what she was eating and I would share it to my story. And it was like the celebration of moms enjoying themselves and eating fresh fruit or treats. And so, ultimately I think it's been a wonderful thing, but it was definitely...
Sounds selfish to me. I don't know, but you do you,
How
Mary
could
Catherine.
How could you?
You do you. I was the guy on Twitter. No. Ha
Oh, you're one of many, let me tell you.
Do you have a favorite comic in the book? Maybe the peach one or something else?
I haven't been asked that question yet. I mean, I really like some of the ones with my kids, like some of the crazy stuff they said. There's one in particular about, it's called What's Your Favorite Butthole, I think. But it's, there's some funny ones like about just some of the crazy stuff kids say. And they love those. Like they love to read my book and they love the ones that they're in saying crazy things.
Okay.
So it's fun because those are the ones they always turn to. And a lot of moms have told me that like their kids love those, the ones where it's like a kid doing something silly. So maybe something like that. One of them were just like fun, silly ones.
Yeah. I wondered now, releasing this book, you've been working on it for a while, and then during a time of political turmoil. So, and I feel this way as doing this podcast is I've recorded a lot of interviews and I'm published them over time. And then the presidential election happened and the world has changed in fundamental ways. And there's so much damage happening. And I wondered how it felt to be putting a book out right at that time. Did it feel like, oh, wow, like, I don't know. How did it feel? Because to me, sometimes I'm like, do I need to redo stuff or do I need to like, I don't know.
Yeah. There was a time where I was like, is my book going to be banned?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it still could be. I guess that's still a possibility. But yeah, I mean, it's funny because when I signed my contract for my book, it was a long time ago. And, it was like, I guess it was 2020, late 2022. And they said, okay, your publication date is March 2025. And I was like, what? Like, that's 3 years from now. I mean, it was 2020. It wasn't really, but it was like, what? And they're like, oh, this is the way it works, blah, blah, blah. This is how long we need. And I said, what if this isn't relevant anymore? And I remember my agent was like, Mary Catherine, this topic's been relevant for about 75 years, maybe even 100. Yeah. Like unfortunately, it's not going anywhere. Yeah. There will be angry moms who are feeling overwhelmed for a very long time. And I was like, yeah, okay, you're right. So I feel like, partly like the content feels a little evergreen, but yes, I mean, I feel like there is an uprising of women who are pretty unhappy with the status quo, with the political climate, with what's trying to be done to our bodies and our lives and our roles and our workplaces. And so I definitely feel like I'm happy that I'm putting it out now. I feel like it's just continuing this conversation that we've been having online. I mean, I think the weird thing is that for me, it's like such old, like, this is what happened in my life now. When I stopped writing, it was 3.5 years ago, and everything has changed. I mean, our relationship, my kids, my family dad. I mean, Ben left his job as a lawyer. He's now working, running his own business, and it's a basketball training business, and he's home like so much more. It's laughable, so just like everything has changed. So it's weird to write a memoir. And then by the time it comes out, you're like, oh, but that's unrecognizable. And at one point, I remember even saying to my editor, like when it was getting close, I was like, should we add like some sort of addendum where I'm like, hey, just kidding. Like none of this is happening anymore. But it is weird. So I think, like everything has changed since I wrote this book. But hopefully it's still relevant and resonates, which, so far it seems like it has.
Well, every detail I think of the book is beautiful. Like your art is wonderful. The stories you're telling are so engaging and fun. But then just the physical artifact itself is beautiful. You've got these beautiful paste downs in the front, is what those are called when you open the book. And the first thing you see are these little word bubbles. And it's this nice bright yellow color. It's so inviting. And it's got like a little bookmark that says, keep breathing, mama. That's this fabric. It's the embossing, or is it debossing? Because it's like inward.
I don't even know.
It is. Yes. It's debossing.
Look at you. I don't even know what that's called.
Yes. So front to back, what a terrific book. So good. Yeah,
my publisher is Chronicle Books, and they really specialize in making like beautiful art books. And so I think they just did an amazing job. I'm really, really grateful to them.
Yeah, the book is called Mama Needs a Minute, a candid, funny, all too relatable comic memoir about surviving motherhood by Mary Catherine Starr. She's a graphic designer, illustrator, yoga teacher, and as I mentioned, you could follow her on Instagram at MomLifeComics. And apparently the kids think comics are cringe now. Is this true?
I don't know. You're telling me? Probably.
Or like you said you got some like feedback from younger unmarried people who are sort of like, ew, cringe.
Yeah, they think
like,
I'm cringe. 'Cause they think I'm like boomer humor because they think everything is equal now and there's no problem with male and female
boy.
dynamics once you have kids. But they don't have kids yet, so let's see.
Yeah.
I hope
Yeah.
that this is no longer relevant by the time they're having kids.
Yeah, like please
Yes.
make this an
I'm like,
artifact
please, I'd
of the
love
past.
this to be boomer experience. Yeah, but right now, ask any millennial, they will understand what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Well, I always like to close with regrets, challenges, and surprises, and you can choose your own adventure on this one. Anything you would change about the book now that it's out? You mentioned maybe, should we do an addendum or should we do this? Or maybe there's like a comic where like, oh, it's too unflattering of Ben. Or by the way, I don't think we ever see Ben's butt, but I think we see like part of your butt. So like maybe that's a regret. And then challenges, like what was hard about it, and then surprises, something you learned about yourself because of the book in particular.
Yeah. Regret, I mean, that's hard because I do feel very proud of this book and I feel like it's what I wanted to say. I mean, I think there's like on a small scale, there's a couple comics like I wish I'd maybe redrawn them or, little tiny details that like no one else will probably notice, but I'm just like, oh, I wish I'd redrawn that. But I think, the one thing that just still is kind of like I just am unsure about is I think I will always kind of have this like nagging feeling of like, because it is a vulnerable memoir, like, did I say too much, or did I feeling like protective of Ben or of my kids or like, did I divulge too much? And I think this is also kind of the challenge. Maybe this is both, but like walking the line when it's a memoir between being authentic and true and vulnerable and also protecting the people you love and not saying too much or protecting yourself from, scrutiny of the public eye. And so, I am proud of it. I think I said what I wanted to say. I think I'll just always, have a little bit of a vulnerability hangover with it, which just knowing it's out there. And I think so far it's like been in the right hands and people who like get it and respect it or at least that's what I've heard, but obviously I think there's always this kind of fear that like someone will read it and take it the wrong way or out of context or not in the way I meant it. And it will hurt someone I love. So I think that's maybe that's a regret and a challenge, but that's always kind of there for me with a book like this. Yeah.
Don't read any 1-star reviews. You don't need to.
Exactly.
If there are any.
Yeah, no, I don't want. I've decided not to read any reviews unless someone sends it to me and says this is a really nice one I saw. I told my friends, I'm like, if you see a nice one, send it to me. Otherwise, I don't want to see it.
Oh, good. Well, to you directly, I will give you a mini review, which is this is a terrific book. I love it. Had so much fun with it, and I'm also this is one that it's easy to recommend because again, you can dip in and out of it. The illustrations are engaging, so I'm like recommending it to some guy for like I have a friend who just had a baby and I'm like, hey, you gotta check this book out.
Thank you. Yeah, I love when a lot of people have told me that they've read it and then they've given it to their husbands or they've left it in the bathroom and their husbands picked it up. And I really love. I've heard from a lot of people who've said their partners have really appreciated it, and so that is so exciting to me because I think I expected women to read it. I did not expect as many men to read it who have, and so I'm happy that I hope that I book my brothers or one's that already a dad and one's about to have their first, and I'm like, please read my book before. I mean, they have now, but I was like, make sure you read it soon before your baby comes because I do think it can be a way in to kind of see some of the mistakes. Like again, like learn from our mistakes, like some of the ways that we can fall into these traps.
Oh, and it's brilliant to point out how early it starts because I think that's what really often will get overlooked is even in people who plan on being egalitarian. Yeah. Pregnancy itself seems like it can be such an isolated thing or that so much is on the mom, but the other partner can be much more involved. The person who's not pregnant can be much more involved at that stage and start there. Yeah.
But it takes effort. I mean, I think that's, it takes intentionality. And I think that's the hard part is, we're all so inundated and busy and overwhelmed and overworked. And so it does, you have to be really intentional about it. And it's easier for the woman to be intentional because she is growing, for the a lot of families, she's growing the baby in her belly. And so she is reminded of it every second of every day. But it's very easy if you're the partner who's not going to be the birthing parent, like to be off at work and forget about it for a little while. And that's not to blame anyone, but it's not happening in your body.
It's just reality.
And so I do think that the intentionality it takes, it's a lot of effort. And that's one of the reasons that we fall into these traps. Yeah.
Well, your book will help people avoid the traps, Mary Catherine. And thanks for taking the time to talk to us about it on Relationscapes.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a great conversation.
Thanks for listening to Relationscapes. If you're joining us for the first time, maybe Mary Catherine recommended the show. Welcome. It's great to have you here. I hope that you'll check out some other episodes too. There's a lot to choose from. If you like this one, Kate Mangino's episode about equal relationships is a good one to check out. And we're actually approaching the 50th episode, so there's a lot you can choose from. I'd also appreciate if people would review the show in Apple Podcasts or rate it in Spotify. It helps build credibility for the show. It's just great for when I'm reaching out to guests. I can let them know what the show is like, how it's resonating with people, so leaving a review can make a big difference. Mates of State provides our theme song. Relationscapes is part of the Dialogue Podcast Network. I'm journalist Blair Hodges in Salt Lake City, and I'll see you next time.